This is episode 48 with Christa Rapoport. Welcome to Spot On Insurance. My name is Ted Taveras. Join us each week as we speak to insurance professionals, attorneys, regulators, and compliance specialists on topics ranging from improving your agency to staying on the right side of the law. Subscribe and stay informed on the effects of new trends and disruptive emerging technologies on your businesses and your industry. Today, I am stoked to introduce you to my good friend, Christa Rapoport. Krista is a former surgical registered nurse, as well as University of Virginia trained attorney. She spent years in general corporate, regulatory affairs, compliance, and growth strategy in the insurance industry. She's worked with AIG and at Japan's largest non-life insurance group, Tokio Marine, not to mention multiple startups. Krista helps insurers, investors, technology companies, brokers, and health associations on many state and federal issues. Currently, she practices at Nelson Taplin Goldwater, which is a government relations firm primarily focused on the insurance industry. Her practice spans all three major insurance groups: property and casualty, life and health, and workers' compensation. Krista, welcome to Spot On.
Well, thank you, Ted. I'm so happy to be here.
How long have I known you? 20 years now?
Yeah, but let's pretend it's 10 because then I'll seem younger.
Good. Well, I want to get right into asking you a couple of questions, but I do want to reminisce a little. I remember the first law group meeting I attended many, many years ago. I got there around 7:30 a.m. and it lasts several hours. And what ran through my mind the first time as I was thinking about it was, oh, I am going to need at least 3 cups of coffee to get through this stuff. But I was riveted. I was at the edge of my seat. Law is drama. Those 3 hours, I didn't need any coffee. And those meetings have always been exciting for me. Is that how law is for you and what you're doing for the insurance industry?
You betcha. When you go into a traditional law library and you'll find that even though we have electronic libraries, that your best law firms, they have the paper books because you have the books lined up and you're comparing things. But if you look at those volumes of stuff, you'll think, wow, this is dry. But it's really the facts. Each facts make things come alive. And those are things that are powerful and meaningful. And when we talk about law, it's really the wonder of America. It is having rules that we know about that are not telling us everything that we have to do, but giving us structure. And then we have freedom that weaves through that structure. And it's a lot of fun.
I want to go back to something else that sounds like it was just as dramatic and just as interesting. Can you touch upon your surgical nursing experience and how you transitioned into the legal side of the insurance industry?
Sure. Well, it's funny. There are, I think, probably 50% of people who get a Bachelor of Science in Nursing leave after 5 years. That's in the past. That is changing because the practice of nursing is changing. I started to get somewhat bored, and that's because at the time I was practicing nursing, only physicians could get paid for performing many things. So there are so many tasks and actions that a nurse could perform. They're through education and training, they're wholly qualified and could not. And so it got a little dull for me. I was very lucky because I was working at Thomas Jefferson University Medical Center in Philadelphia, PA. It's a wonderful institution. They brought on classes from the Wharton School, that's the University of Pennsylvania School of Business. And I took a couple business courses, and then I took one on the medical legal aspects of healthcare. And I was fascinated. I had never been exposed to law ever. I come from a science family and an accounting family. So, we didn't have any, there were distant cousins who were lawyers, but no one I knew. And so when I got hooked on that, I thought, wow, I realized it lit a fire in me. And then I started to investigate law schools, and then I went to law school.
Well, give me the skinny on Nelson Taplin and Goldwater where you're at now. Can you discuss some of the specifics of your work with the firm itself, and some of the specifics?
Sure. Well, we are a group of folks who have a lot of experience in government, either on the federal level, on the state level, and on the local level, and also a lot of experience in all 56 state or jurisdiction, the state departments of insurance. So that includes anywhere from Texas or Puerto Rico, where you are, or Guam, or the U.S. Mariana Islands, or Illinois. We're chaired by former U.S. Senator Ben Nelson. He is an amazing guy who was an insurance company executive. Then he became the governor of Nebraska. Then he became a U.S. Senator. That was followed by him becoming the chief executive officer of the National Association of Insurance Commissioners. So he, as well as Norm Taplin, who's super talented in regulatory affairs, and then Republican Congressman Barry Goldwater Jr., they formed this firm, and we help companies. We have strong relationships, strong talent, strong substantive knowledge. And so when folks come to us and say, hey, we have this business issue and we can't go forward because of this law or this issue, or we're being investigated, we help them out.
It sounds fascinating to me, the types of puzzles and problems that law lends itself to. And if you like solving those puzzles, if you like helping people, I can see where that has such a great attraction for you.
Exactly. And, it's shifted me because, I love healthcare. And early in my career, I had the chance to set up managed care workers' compensation arrangements. And this was in about 42 states. I was with a team. We were very focused. We flew to many state departments of labor, to state capitals, to state departments of insurance. And we were able to bring about great occupational medical care for patients. The great care meant that people got better faster. So there was very little lost time or worker replacement. And that meant that there were quite a few savings for employers. And so it made workers' compensation as a line of business profitable. And that's how I started getting involved with states. But that's just one area. But as you grow, you think, okay, I know comp, I don't know these other things. But then I became involved in financial examinations and something called a market conduct exam. And both are types of examinations which state departments of insurance conduct on insurers primarily. So on the financial examination, every insurer between usually 3 to 5 years is examined to make sure that they're very solvent. And that's when regulators comb through their checkbooks and everything, their investments, to make sure that they're being properly managed. Because at the end of the day, an insurance company is really a safe bank. It is a place where a governor expects that when the lightning bolt strikes a factory, let's say, and people are injured or there's damage, that if there's an insurance policy and this is a covered event, that the claims will be paid, that the factory will be rebuilt, that injured workers will be helped. So when you have a financial exam, it's making sure there's money in the bank and it's very prudently managed so that things run well. The other area I got involved in was market conduct examination. And states all try to be as efficient as they can. And one way they do that is that they have databases for complaints. So they're hearing complaints about healthcare policies that are state-based, not federal, or homeowners policies. And they, after a time, they're like, wait a minute, we're seeing these patterns. And then they go and they investigate what's happening. And these investigations can be on insurance agency, a third-party administrator, an insurance company. Well, I worked at a very large insurance group that had nearly 60 insurance companies. So there wasn't a year that we didn't have either a financial examination or a market conduct examination, basically saying, tell us, we see these things that you're doing, company. We don't think it's good for our citizens. You need to make this right. Let's talk about it. And those talk, that could go on 1 or 2 years sometimes until everything's resolved. But those two major things taught me a lot about how states operate. It also taught me about how states have different personalities and how they enforce and how they interpret their laws. But those gave me a nice firm foundation. So when I left, working at major insurance groups and went to smaller groups, I had a great understanding about how things run.
Spot On is sponsored by Insurance Licensing Services of America. Need help with corporate name changes, annual returns, or surplus lines tax filings? Feeling overwhelmed? Well, If you're looking for experts in regulatory compliance, you've come to the right place. ILSA provides the industry with over 50 services. To learn more about the company and how they can help, visit ilsainc.com.
Has cybersecurity played a role in any of the work that you've done?
I had the good fortune to work with a really great guy who taught me a lot about cybersecurity. And in fact, we started life at a major insurance group, and then we were at a startup together. And when you're at a large company, you have all these departments that do things perfectly. But when you go to a small company, you have to learn how to do everything from figure out how the mailroom should work till how email should come in. So we set up, I helped on the legal side, which is minor, but I knew the legal standards, and which I considered to be like the chapter headings and all the words and sentences this guy knew. And so IT infrastructure, applications, how we run reports, cybersecurity, monitoring. These are all things that we had to make sure were in place. And in fact, at that small company, we very early on had a financial examination. And one of the questions that the areas that are examined was our IT. And so that was very helpful. And even today, I do some work with a credit union. And that is, when we talk about cybersecurity, we heard about the big hack of a big credit agency, and that many Americans' data was at risk.
Yeah.
It's very concerning because it's not like in days of old, you had a company that would manage data. It was, either under lock and key or, contained files. Now we have things that might be in clouds. We might have many, many vendors. I recall there was a problem with a hack, and the IT department could not figure out what had happened. And it turned out that they had a vending machine company who monitored the inventory in the soda machines remotely, and a hacker was able to get into that portal. So,
wow.
Yeah, right. So when you look at this infrastructure, we have to really. It's really important now that we are using so many different types of vendors, and it's so many companies who work together to make businesses run, that we pay attention to how they're operating.
It's almost like stopping leaks when I think about it. Water is coming in from all sides. You have it contained. You think it's contained, but it finds this little hole, and all of a sudden you've got flooding happening downstairs, or a little pipe, it bursts, and all of a sudden you have another event happening there. Cybersecurity to me feels just like that. You just don't know where it's going to come from and where it's going to hit, and you've got to shore up so many areas.
Exactly. Just yesterday, I had a cybersecurity call, and we talked about things like risk assessment that you're supposed to do on your company. And then based on that, you have policies and procedures. Now, you can go and buy some, but when you're examined and they don't fit what you're doing, they're sort of useless, right? It's sort of like, using a contract on the internet and not changing it. You have to have backups. You have to have access restrictions, like for email. And then, those are your basic things, as well as password policies. But then, are you conducting vulnerability scan? And what if you have an incident and you find it? What do you do? How do you retain your data? And then how do you train or monitor? And then what do you do for audit trails? So for this one company, we looked at a company I like a lot called Cybershot. And basically, it's a cool company. Dale Klein's the CEO. He did some work for British Telecom, where they basically could go to any company, and Cybershot's like a hat you put on. There's a passive way they can look at how much data is used, if people are downloading things, if there's they know that Krista usually signs on from New York, but they see signing on from Canada or Russia, then they can look into that pretty quickly and figure out the incident, and then feed to the company's IT department how to fix it. Now, this is a great service for smaller companies who do not have the infrastructure of large companies. So let's say I want to do business, and I am a claims third-party administrator, and I want to work for a very large life insurance company for a particular product. Well, they might say to me, you know what, you're really great, you're very talented, but I can't trust your IT. And what are you going to do about cybersecurity hacks? Well, I can say, well, I have Cybershark, and share their IT department and get signed off, and then you can be cleared as a vendor. So
Wow, that's good information.
thank you. That's a great, and there, I looked at other, as I find other companies, um, I try to keep in mind what companies are good where, because I don't know if I'm going to have something doing with diplomats' families' health coverage, or a reinsurance treaty, or the acquisition of an insurance company. I never know what's going to come in. So I do keep a list of good referral companies. And when I hear and I pay attention to what's said to me with feedback, if I've referred a company to someone and they say, well, I had this, and this issue, I'll listen to it. And I might go back to the company and say, I hear this, and they'll explain, but I do, quality is important. So I have to make sure that if I'm recommending something, that I believe in it.
Krista, unlike surgical nursing, it sounds like you don't have time to be bored here.
I don't. I do not. And I do have to say about surgical nursing. It's a great. Medicine and nursing is changing. I went to a recent health policy program about value-based pricing, and that's like giving healthcare providers, doctors, hospitals incentive to make you healthy as possible, rather than waiting until you need drastic medical things. And
Hmm.
one thing they talked about is that today, medical schools and allied health schools for physical therapy, nursing, and others, they work together, and they're working for different types of reimbursement so that they can work on making people well, and there's incentive, to everyone to do what they should do. So nurses have a lot more autonomy than they used to, and timing's everything. But I was very happy to hear about that change.
Yeah, I'm happy to hear that too. I wanted to shift over.
Yeah.
This is around the heavy surplus lines time. So I wanted to pick your brain, see what your definition of surplus lines is, who benefits from surplus lines. So can you touch upon that for us?
Yes. Surplus lines is a wonderful type of property and casualty insurance. I want to go first to what is standard insurance, property and casualty insurance. Those are risks that we have data on. We know about them. Those are things like insuring a house, insuring a small business. It's general liability. We know, we basically can look at the SIC code for business, and we have data. And based on that, we have policies, rates, and forms, so that we can, as an insurance company, issue a policy that's appropriate. But the thing is, what happens when the person comes to us and they're like, well, I'm a dynamite manufacturer, or I build extreme race cars, or I build extreme roller coasters. There's really not enough of a pool of folks who need this type of insurance, so that we have enough information to set rates. And so there's some things that the state insurance departments have decided. They're going to say, they look at their market and say, when people come to them and say, hey, I'm the Dynamite Manufacturer Association, we can't get covered in your state. The state might say, you know what? I have a list of folks similar to you who can't get insurance, and it's called the Surplus Lines Export List. And we're going to put you on this list. And that means you can go to a surplus lines insurer. That surplus lines insurer takes strange, hard to find risk, and they construct a policy for them. And this is fantastic, because as a dynamite manufacturer, I can get covered and I can get something that fits me. Now, for the surplus lines insurer, they have to have flexibility. So they are licensed insurers. They are examined in one state, but they are not recognized in other states. They are not licensed in other states. There may be something called whitelisted, meaning they are just sort of registered.
Uh-huh.
But they are operating to fill niches. So they will either issue policies to folks who are on the export list, or if there is, let's say I am a nail manicurist to the stars, and if I have one slip up, it could cost a celebrity millions of dollars if they're sick with an infection. And maybe the standard insurers say, we're not going to issue a policy this is not on an export list because they don't have manicures, but I may go to a surplus lines insurer who might go to, have to do what's called a diligence search and go to 3 insurers who say, no, we're not going to write that. And then they can issue a policy. So either something's exportable, or after a diligence search, there's no one on the standard lines who will issue the policy. Then a surplus lines carrier can issue that policy. And it really helps when coverage is unavailable. If the standard market can't or will not provide coverage for consumer, then the surplus lines market, with the help of a licensed surplus lines broker, will help. And what's critical is that this is really a broker supported market. Surplus lines brokers do a tremendous job because they know local conditions. They know what businesses are out in their area, who needs help, and where to get it.
Krista, if a spot-on listener wants to get in touch with you, how do they go about it?
Well, they can, my contact information is on Nelson Taplin Goldwater's website. They could send info at ntgconsultants.com, or they could go to www.ntgconsultants.com, or my own email address, which I have, it's csrapoport@ntgconsultants.com. I give you the link because Rapoport can be spelled like 7 different ways. So that's a trick.
Krista, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you very much.
Be sure and catch episode 49, part 2 of our conversation, where we explore surplus lines and the role it plays as the insurance market's technology partner. Visit spotoninsurance.com, where you discover an ever-growing library of podcasts, videos, articles, and online tools by professionals for professionals to enhance your insurance education. By the way, that's where you'll also find our podcast notes and bonus resources. Please don't forget to click the iTunes link to rate and review, and let others know what you think of Spot On Insurance. Thank you for joining us, and we'll catch you next week.